welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about an undrafted free agent signing the Lions made this offseason. This was the running back out of Arkansas, Rakeem Boyd. His story to ending up with the Detroit Lions is pretty nuts. It's a wild ride. So let's get into it.
Up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Yeah! He's the GOAT! There's nobody! So welcome everybody to the video. Glad you guys are here. How you guys doing today? We doing good today? Hopefully everybody's doing good. We got a very entertaining story to discuss in today's video as we talk about running back Rakeem Boyd. And of course, like the other videos, this is going to, involve some film, things like that. We're going to dive into strengths, weaknesses, whether or not we think he can make the team for the Detroit Lions. But I do think that it's a pretty wild ride that he took to land with the Detroit Lions. And there's definitely a lot of Arkansas fans that are not very happy with him, okay? So I kind of want to dive into that first, and then we'll get into the on-the-field type of stuff, okay? I just want to talk about that first. So coming out of high school, this was a 3-star recruit that had, get this, 80 total touchdowns in his high school career as a running back. Just absolutely insane. Decides to commit to Texas A&M, an SEC school, not Arkansas. He commits to Texas A&M, and he goes to Texas A&M. He's a redshirt freshman. He's getting set to play a sophomore season, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. He actually had to transfer to a JUCO college because apparently he didn't have enough classes. He dropped too many classes. So because of that, he didn't have enough hourly credits, which meant that he would transfer to a JUCO college where he would have 1,200 yards rushing. One way Rakeem Boyd really helps himself get his name out there after going to junior college was being on Netflix's Last Chance U. So he was an actor. What? I mean, he's doing it all. Then after that season, he would transfer back into the SEC, this time with the Arkansas Razorbacks. And his statistics in his first 2 years were just incredible as a whole. His first year, he averaged 5.9 yards per carry, over 700 yards rushing. And in his second season with Arkansas in 2019, he really put himself on the map. He had over 1,000 yards rushing, 6.2 yards per carry, and the next upcoming season, he was on the watch list for the top running back in the country. And many people believe that if he would have came out of draft in 2020, he could be one of the top running backs in that class. That's how good he was in 2019. But then 2020 comes around, and here's where things get kind of crazy. 2020 comes around, and he decides to come back to school for Arkansas. He's coming back to school for Arkansas. He wants to play again, and there's a lot of changes going on with the Razorbacks. They have a new quarterback transferring in, Felipe Franks, new head coach, new offensive coordinator. It's all new, new offensive line coach. Everything's new for Arkansas, and he's like, hey, I want to come back, and I want to be a part of this, turning this around, because the 2 years that he put up statistically outstanding seasons, their team was awful. Just simple, they were awful. So he's like, I want to come back and be a part of this and try to turn this thing around. But unfortunately, that's not how the season really went at all. It was kind of just a mess the entire way through. So the first game he plays in comes against Georgia, who is arguably the best run defensive team in the country. And he goes for 21 total yards on 11 carries for his 2020 career. The second game then against Ole Miss, he gets injured in the second quarter. Now, apparently he was dealing with multiple injuries throughout the entire 2020 season. Those injuries include a rotator cuff injury, labrum injury, bone bruise. All right, he was dealing with some injuries in 2020. So he misses his third game, and in that game, they have an up-and-coming running back that basically just shines. He shines in that game that Rakeem Boyd doesn't play in, and now Boyd is looking at maybe a little bit of a less of a role from the running back position. And remember, this guy came into the year on the watch list for the Doak Walker Award. He was the only player on Arkansas to be on the preseason All-SEC team. He was on the second. He had one rushing game this entire season. That game against Tennessee, where he had 100 yards rushing, and he got a lot of carries. He averaged like 3.4 yards per carry in that game. So it wasn't even that super impressive. His roommate apparently caught COVID. Now, he didn't have COVID. I heard he went to a house party or something. I don't know exactly what happened there, but regardless, his teammate caught COVID, which meant that he would miss time as well because of last season was close contact. You're going to miss time because you were in close contact with someone that had COVID, even if he didn't have it. So he misses time for that. But then here's where things really take a bad turn. And this is the end of the season. I don't even know if I want to call it a bad turn. It just really, shakes things up. And this is towards the end of the year with 2 games left to play. It's been pretty much a struggle all year for Rakeem Boyd. He struggled statistically. He decides to opt out of the last couple of games of the season. Now, an interesting note here is Jerry Jacobs did this as well, the cornerback. He also has been signed to Detroit Lions UDFA. So I just want to throw that in there. Just an interesting little nugget. But he opts out for the final few games. And let me just say, Arkansas fans were not very happy. Some people understood the decision, but a lot of fans are not very happy because he was the team captain. And a lot of people looked at it like he was giving up on the team. To hear from Rakeem Boyd, and he talked about this decision to opt out. And he basically said that no more wasting time. All right, we got to prepare for the NFL draft. Now, I think you got to look at this from both point of views. And I don't know extremely well how this went down because I'm not an Arkansas fan. I didn't follow it throughout the year. But I can tell you this. When you look at from his point of view, basically kind of chose his family in a way because he said that financially they needed help. And financially, he knew that obviously the NFL, you're going to get paid. So he said, no more wasting time. I'm going to opt out of this season, and I'm going to basically get prepared for the draft, and now I'm going to try to make some money. So you love that part. I mean, you're rooting for him in that way, but still a lot of Arkansas fans are not happy. Some people believe he should have played because that could help the stock, because obviously 2020, those statistics aren't going to help that much for your draft stock. But again, this was a guy that coming off a 2019 season looked like he could have been one of the top running backs if he would have just came out into the NFL draft, but he decided to come back. Now look at this from his point of view for a second. To get money, he understands he needs to get money. He decides to come back for the 2020 season, though. He wants to be there with his teammates. He's going for the all-time rushing record for Arkansas. He was looking to have his biggest season yet. They're bringing in new head coaches. They have a new quarterback. I mean, things are looking up. So he decides to come back. But it just kind of spirals out of control. I mean, we're talking about injuries, kind of losing some of your role, COVID. And at that point, you look at his numbers, he's averaging 3.9 yards per carry. He's got just over 300 yards rushing. And I think at this point, he's saying to himself, look, this is not at all going how I thought it would go. This season has been bad, dealing with injuries. Rakeem Boyd stated that he never fully recovered after that second game injury, but it was just like, hey, Rakeem, you got to get out there. And he said, look, there's no bad blood between the coaching staff, but when he states, not to waste time, basically it was like, hey, we got to get healthy. This is just a mess. Let's just get away from this. Let's go focus on the draft. Brings up the fact that, hey, what I did before I was injured, and now I'm healthy. I see both sides of it. I can see the Rakeem Boyd side looking at it saying, hey, look, this is not helping my stock whatsoever. It's probably not going to help my stock. I'm not completely healthy. I need, to get healthy. And if I'm here, I'm going to play. Obviously, I don't want to opt out, but what went from being a surefire, yeah, you're going to be a pick somewhere. Now, all of a sudden, this is in jeopardy after this kind of season, and I'm still dealing with injuries. I think to him saying not to waste time is we are wasting time trying to continue to go through this. We got to get prepared for the draft so, we can do this thing at the next level because, ultimately he understood that, I guess for financial reasons, he needed to get into the NFL. And then I can understand the Arkansas side. I mean, they're looking at this like, wait a minute, you're a team captain. You're supposed to be the leader of this team. And with 2 games left to play, you opt out of the season? That's wrong. You might as well just finish the season at that point. I understand both sides, but for him, I mean, he was trying to look ahead and say, okay, hey, this is just what I got to do. I don't want to do it. I hate to leave my teammates, but at the same time, I feel like we're not going somewhere with this, and I got to get prepared for the next stage because I got to get to the NFL. We're talking about, is he going to get drafted? And he didn't. He was signed by the Detroit Lions as an undrafted free agent. We know the talent is there, but he was signed as a UDFA. So kind of crazy story. That doesn't guarantee he'll make the team. We're not sure if he will. The Lions did waive Kieran Johnson, which obviously helps his chances, but they also signed Dedrick Mills as a UDFA, and they drafted Jermar Jefferson out of Oregon State. So we will talk about Dedrick Mills soon. I was working on that a little bit. We'll talk about him soon, but let's start with Rakeem Boyd first. So it's just kind of a crazy story, kind of a crazy path to landing with the Detroit Lions. And, I just think I wanted to share that first before we start to get onto the on-the-field stuff. But before knowing about all this background and really even looking at statistics that much, I knew 2019 was a great year and 2020 wasn't the best. I just dove into the film. I didn't read what other people said. I just dove into the film. I didn't want to have a, perception about this guy before I watched the film. That's the first thing that I did. And I gotta say, there's definitely things to like to his game, and it reminds me a lot of certain guys that we've brought in so far to the running back position. You can see a pattern with the direction the Lions are going, at least for competition's sake, with the type of running backs that they are bringing in. Again, remember, this guy was looking like he could have been one of the top running backs coming out of the 2020 draft if he would have, went in and declared for the draft. But Rakeem Boyd at 5'11", 213 pounds, which is a great build for the running back position. I think first off, let's start with the schematic fit. I think it's definitely there. You're talking about an offense that played a lot of spread at Arkansas, did our offensive video, talked about what we think the Lions could implement next season, and a lot of those things Arkansas implemented as well. You're looking at pistol, shotgun, things like that. Their center does get mixed in as well. He definitely has his experience in a spread offense. So I think schematically you can see the spit fit. You like him better as a zone runner as well. So you can see the schematic fit when you watch a guy like Rakeem Boyd. But then you get into what do you like and what do you not like. As I mentioned, I think schematically there's definitely a fit here. He's been part of an offense that could fit and translate to the Detroit Lions scheme. And I think, he's definitely a between the tackles type of runner. Not afraid whatsoever to get between the tackles. He's not one of those players that needs to bounce to the outside. He loves to get to the outside, doesn't like, the contact. He invites contact. Gives me some Jamal Williams vibes in that way. And another way he gives me Jamal Williams vibes, and you can see this with a lot of running backs we've been bringing in, a lot of similarities on just their play style, is he runs with a mentality that fans are definitely going to like, okay? He runs with a heart that fans are going to like. What do I mean by that? Keeping his legs turning, inviting contact, running through contact, constantly falling forward, all right? Just running extremely hard, running with a lot of heart. That's the kind of run style that he does have. Kind of some of that build up, momentum. I'm going to run through you once I get going downhill a little bit, all right? Just like Jamal Williams did. So I think the run style translates to the NFL, falling forward, keeping the legs turning. It allows you to get some extra yards. It allows you to consistently fall forward. It helps you in short yardage situations. And just picking up a few extra yards here and there that will be very vital to an offense. So I think the run style definitely fits what the Detroit Lions are looking for. The next couple of things, again, very similar to a guy like Jermar Jefferson in a way, but I think this is his standout trait to me. My favorite trait of his game is the way that he follows blockers. Now, patience is also a very big part of this as well, but the way that he follows and sets up blockers in front of him. Extremely patient as a runner. A lot of times he puts his hands right on the offensive lineman or lead blocker, whoever that is, and he kind of just follows him through, just like an old school running back would, right? He's not overrunning his blockers. He's not the most explosive or athletic guy either, so it makes sense, but he plays to that. He plays the patient game. He plays really well with his blockers, sets his blockers up extremely well, puts them in situations to block well for him. So when you have him in a zone rushing scheme where he's kind of looking for the holes, he's got to be patient. He's got to find them. This is the type of running back that you want. It's good vision. I've noticed multiple occasions where he would get a handoff right up the gut, and it would just kind of be a pile, and he would stop, kind of get his hand on offensive lineman, and then bounce it out to the outside or bounce through a different gap. But he was the type of runner that had that patient run style, follow the blockers mentality, get your hand on the offensive lineman and kind of follow him and ride him through the play. That was like the old school running back style that I saw. So I thought that was really cool. And again, I'm all about the vision, man. Can you see where you're going? All right, top speed, yeah, that's exciting. It gives you flashes here and there, but can you see where you're going? All right, that's the first thing. Because if I'm blocking well and I'm opening up creases, but you can't find them, that doesn't help. We could have the best offensive line in the NFL, but if you have no idea where you're running the football, it doesn't help me. So that's something I've been very focused on. You guys know that, and you can see it. I love that old school kind of mentality there. He does have good contact balance as well for the most part. Now, where this does waver a little bit is that I'm not going to say it's a good or bad thing, but he definitely likes to hurdle people, like a lot. All right, I don't know what it is, but he likes to jump over guys. Maybe it's because he's not super elusive, which we'll get into, but he definitely likes to try to get off the air. And when you're in the air, obviously your balance is definitely going to struggle there. But he does have pretty good contact balance, and that kind of blends into his ability to keep turning his legs, keep moving forward as he kind of just piles through like a bowling ball just for an extra couple of yards. So it's pretty good contact balance. I would definitely have to say with some of those arm tackles, he can kind of stay on his feet there. He does have some of that top end speed. I mean, we look at his 40 time, you're not going to say that he does. You're not going to be very impressed. However, he does have some top end speed. It mainly showed up in 2019. 40 time doesn't always tell the full story here, and he does have some top end speed. He's, again, not a burner by any means. He's no Chuba Hubbard, but he definitely has a little bit of top end kick, and it showed off, with the ability to break some of those big runs and finish off the play and take it to the house. So that's good. Not incredible top end speed, but there's enough there. And, obviously he was a home run threat big time in 2019, way less in 2020, which is kind of a big reason. I mean, the thing is with the running back, you got to realize a couple run plays can really change things, especially with a small sample size. A couple big run plays can obviously change your statistics big time. Rakeem Boyd's sample size was small enough that on 81 carries in 2020, all right, 81 carries, the guy averaged 3.9 yards per carry for 314 yards. Now, he only had one carry over 15 yards the entire season. That went for 16 yards. That's it, 16. But then in 2019, he had tons of big runs. All right, he had tons of big runs in 2019. That definitely helped that yards per carry number. So let's say hypothetically he had one big run in 2019, just one big run. Let's say he had a 59-yard run. Okay, now where'd you get that number from? Well, if you look at 2019, he had like 3 or 4 runs that were longer than 59 yards. All right, 59 yards, one of his longest runs in one of his games. Let's just say he had a 59-yard run. Nothing crazy, not 90, not 80, just 59 yards. If you had one 59-yard run in 2020, his yards per carry on 82 now attempts would have went from 3.9 to 4.5 yards per carry. All right, that huge of a difference because the sample size was so small. So that's the thing. It was such a rough year that not having one of those big runs statistically, it was like, man, he fell off. It really, with the lack of opportunities, he never had that big run that maybe even just one more snap, he could have had that big run and it would have just changed statistically the outlook. That is something to not only make you be like, okay, 2020, obviously he didn't have as many of those big runs, but also say to yourself, okay, 2019, I mean, how much of this production may have been slightly inflated by the fact that he had some of those huge runs against certain teams? You know, how much is that? So it's a little bit concerning, but it's also a little bit relieving, I guess, if you look at the 2020 stats. A couple ways people like to look at this. You can either take the entire sample size at Arkansas and say he averaged 5.6 yards per carry in Arkansas, which obviously is really good. You could take that and say, okay, let's just go with that because that's the full sample size here. And then obviously in high school, he had 80 touchdowns in high school, which is nuts. And at JUCO, he had 1,200 yards. But anyways, just Arkansas alone, you could take the entire thing and say he averaged 5.6 yards per carry. That's strong. Or some people like to say, take away your best, take away your worst. Take away his best season, 6.2 yards per carry. Take away his worst season, 3.9 yards per carry. What are you left with? You're left with 5.9 yards per carry. He's definitely had the home run hitting ability in the past. We just didn't see it in 2020. But the reason to be optimistic is because, like I said, he was dealing with some injuries in 2020, and maybe that's why we didn't see many of those home run plays. But regardless, he's been a part of a few of those. Definitely a goal line threat. You know, red zone situations, short area situations. He was the guy that got the football in those situations, at least from what I've seen. And the Lions right now really, I don't know if they have, how would I even call this? Like a bruiser. Like they don't have their A.J. Dillon like the Packers do, but they have running backs that have done this. You know, Jamal Williams was big time in these short yardage situations for the Packers. I mean, that was their guy. You know, it wasn't Aaron Jones, it was Jamal Williams. And I think that's what you see with Rakeem Boyd. He has a nice build, 5'11", 213 to run between tackles. Like I said, he invites contact, so it works for him. Dedrick Camille, so we're going to talk about soon, probably even better at that because he plays almost like a fullback, but definitely can use him in those short yardage situations. Couple seasons, he's had 0 fumbles recorded. However, I did see 1 fumble, and it came on like a bobbled, handoff. They tried to do a little bit of read option there. The ball kind of got loose, and it was a fumble. So I guess you could put that on him. I'm not sure who you want to put that on, but I think statistically speaking, he didn't account for any fumbles. And to combine with that not fumbling thing, when you watch him, he does run a lot with 2 hands on the football. Okay, he runs like he's protecting the football. Okay, like he's protecting a baby or something. That's how he runs. It's cool. I like it. I mean, he's not a super explosive running back, which we'll get into. So he understands that, and he's like, hey, I don't need to, be flailing this thing around like I'm LaShawn McCoy. It's kind of my responsibility, so I'm going to do that. He has that running style, patience. He has the patient, follow your blockers, invite contact, protect the football type of mentality. And that's cool. It works. It does. May not excite you as much when you watch his highlight tape, but it works for him. First off, the elusiveness side of his game is definitely lacking. Not a very elusive running back, not going to, knock you out of your shoes, break you out of your shoes. He's not super shifty with the ball in his hands. He has good contact balance, but he's not extremely crafty in space, not very creative, not making you miss in space where he's that much of a threat in those type of situations. All right, for him, it's about contact balance, a little bit of downhill steam, and ability to make some plays in open space, but he's usually not, super shifty, and he's not concerning to defenses in those situations. That's why it's so important for him to be a guy that's very patient as a runner, to follow his blocker, to set up things. I think part of the reason he lacks some of that is because he's a very high cut runner. He runs very tall. He's a tall running back in general at 5'11". Shorter running backs, a lot of times people like that. He doesn't get super low when he runs either, so he kind of stands pretty high, which obviously makes it easier for defenders to see. But not only that, it takes away a lot from elusiveness, because when you're standing up tall, it's tough to make people miss when you're standing tall. It really slows you down. It slows down the change of direction because he's not super elusive. That's kind of like his thing. He's going to kind of jump over the ankle tackles because he's got a pretty nice build to him. He's not a very elusive or shifty type of runner. And I think lacking that excitement trait also hurts his stock as well. He doesn't really have an exciting trait to his game. Aside from some of the big runs, I mean, when you watch him, it's not like, whoa, you see him break that guy's ankles. Like, he doesn't excite you in the flashy ways. He's not a flashy running back. But that's okay. You don't need to be a flashy running back to be a good player in the NFL. He's also lacking some of that get to the edge speed. Some of that burst, some of that acceleration. I get the handoff or I get a toss and I can get to the edge. I can beat the edge rusher to the edge. I can beat a linebacker out there. Doesn't really show that on film, and maybe he didn't get tons of opportunities trying to do that. I think he does lack some of that get to the edge ability. His top end speed isn't terrible. He's out in the open field, but I think getting to the edge even isn't his best. But again, he realized that. Just like Jamal Williams, go watch his film, very similar. I'm going to try to cut up field here. I'm going to cut up here. Like I said, not super flashy, not super athletic, does lack some of the agility, who runs very tall. So that part of his game is missing, and of course the production to put on top of that 2020 scares teams away for sure. And then you have the injuries as well. Just the whole way last year folded was just bad. Talk about him as a pass catcher. It looked like he improved as a pass catcher. It was expected he was going to be a bigger threat in that area last season, even though he only had 10 receptions, but he only played in like 6 games. Either way, it looked like he would improve based on the offense that was coming in. It didn't really improve that much, having only 10 receptions, but he looked like a natural pass catcher at times, known for his drops. He has too many drops in the past. in comparison to the opportunities that he's gotten. So statistically speaking there, it doesn't look very good, but he does flash looking like a pass catcher, plucking the ball in the air and bringing it into his body. Drops on his tape that definitely concern you. He's not like a super flexible route runner, kind of like when he runs kind of tall, so he doesn't run a super deep route tree. I've seen a couple of plays downfield, some wheel routes, things like that, but usually it's not very deep. He runs a lot of shallow routes, and he doesn't get a lot of separation there because I think he's lacking some of that quickness and explosiveness. So for him, he's not a bad pass catcher. I think screens are going to be nice for him because of his patience setting up blockers. Screens are going to be really nice for him, and he can catch the football. He just has some of those drops. So I don't think he's like today's Demetric Felton type of pass catching threat. Like, he's not that, what a lot of people really covet. I would say in pass protection. Now, pass protection, he's gotten his biggest knocks here, I think, is people are like, wow, he really struggles pass protection. Even though, again, maybe it's just the film that I watched. Maybe he just improved in 2020. Didn't think he was bad in pass protection, but I did have one knock against him in pass protection, and this is that he doesn't often stay connected. Too many times he just kind of puts his shoulder in the rusher, and that's good. It knocks him off his feet a little bit. But if he doesn't stay connected, obviously he's going to regain his balance and to chase the quarterback. And there were a couple times like that where, he pushed him off for a second, but he wouldn't actually block him. He just kind of chuck him. And then the pass rusher would get back into the play. And sometimes they made a play still. So that's the problem. You want him to play more like a blocker and just get connected instead a little bit more. But he brings power. Again, he invites, the contact side of his game. And I've seen him stand up some big guys that have attacked. There's no fear whatsoever at all when someone's attacking. I mean, he will put his shoulder in him, and he's going to try to stand you up. He's a really good build for that. Even though his bench press reps came back not so good, he definitely invites the type of contact as a pass protector. Okay, now, no, this is not a pass play, but I did think it was worth showing. I think this is just really good effort, and it shows his willingness as a blocker, and especially, as a pass blocker as well. Plays like this, you're going to get the option play, and he just kind of reaches out, and he's able to clip that edge defender. I think he has a solid to good pass protector. I just think there's inconsistency there because he doesn't consistently connect. He just kind of chucks, and then he leaves, even though he could, that he doesn't. So, as a pass blocker, I think the upside's there. I think he could be a good pass blocker, and Deuce Staley may have to work with him a little bit there, but Deuce to say if you can't pass block, can't play for me. So I think it's worth cleaning up little things, but I think for the most part, he could definitely bring the upside as a pass protector. It's pretty much a mess of a year. However, there are things here that I do like, and I think he has the translatable qualities to the NFL. The upside may not be the highest. However, when you talk about what he was able to do statistically in some of those earlier seasons, there's a reason for that. It didn't just happen. And I think the patience, the scheme fit, vision, the following the blockers, I think he's going to be huge in screens, the zone rushing play. I think that's where he's going to really thrive for the Detroit Lions. And of course, I think he plays with the physicality to the game that makes you excited. I mean, he'll run through arm tackles. He'll keep his legs turning. That kind of thing makes you excited as a fan. So I think he brings that. He just lacks some of that flashiness, lacks some of that excitement because he doesn't have that quickness or the burst, even though it is exciting to me when he starts, rumbling, stumbling, 10 yards down the field because he's just bouncing off of guys with his great contact balance. I like that. But, it's not like the flashy thing that pops on the screen. Like, look how fast he is. He doesn't separate from other guys. You don't notice that. He's not super elusive, not shaking defenders in the open field, but he does have the traits that can translate to the NFL. May not be, one of the most dynamic rushers or dynamic running backs as a whole, but I think he could had some contributions. Now, he was never a bell cow at Arkansas. Never was, even in his good seasons. And that means he probably isn't going to be at the next level. But that's cool. We don't need a bell cow, right? We're good rotational running backs. So for him, he's competing for that fourth spot, third spot with Jamar Jefferson right now. And we'll see if he wins it. We have Dedrick Mills to talk about soon as well. So we'll get to that in a little while. More concern statistically that I think I must bring up is if you look at that 2019 season, just look at how he fared against three of the top teams, Alabama, Auburn, LSU. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't that good either. I mean, against Auburn, it was like 4.2 yards per carry on 50 yards. Not terrible, but LSU and Auburn, he really struggled. So, when you look at how he did it and fared against some of the top competition, it is a little bit concerning. Those guys being the guys that are in the NFL, right? The best of the best is in the NFL. But at the same time, as I mentioned, Arkansas is not the class of the SEC. But let me know your thoughts, comments below. Do you think Rakeem Boyd makes the team? This one's tough because I think there's very big two sides here. I think just in his game, just, the ups and the downs, the big highs and the big lows, it's really tough to gauge where he's going to get. A guy, like we talked about Dedrick Mills, it's more just what are lines valuing here. For him, it's a little bit like, what are we going to see coming to training camp? Is he going to be able to stay healthy? That's a huge part of it. Rakeem Boyd hit on it perfectly here with the injuries, saying that, hey, you know what I did before I was injured? You were dealing with some injuries, and I was, just trying to be tough, just get out there and, play through it. Teams are wondering if I'm healthy. And that's the thing. We got to see if Rakeem Boyd's healthy. So hopefully he is. Hopefully everything is okay there. And hopefully, he gets back to 100%. And we'll see what he does. Injuries, production, not having that exciting trait or quality, all those combined, that kind of leads to undrafted. Yet, there obviously was enough for him to have some really big production in his first 2 seasons. And you can see it. He even translated 2020. Even though he didn't have the best games, you can see the vision, the patience, and things like that. You wonder how he'll play against NFL speed. But as much as you may be concerned against how he did against some of the best teams, you also have to keep in mind that he was playing for Arkansas. Nothing against Arkansas. No hate to their fans whatsoever. I think it's cool that we're getting all these Arkansas guys. But aren't the class of the SEC. And, the supporting cast probably wasn't the best. Was there a chance that Rakeem Boyd could legitimately be a steal for the Lions UDFA? Yes, there's actually a very legitimate chance, and he's definitely going to compete with Jamar Jefferson and Dedrick Mills. I mean, even with 2020, right? If this guy's healthy, if he can come back and be healthy, I mean, you can't take away what he was able to do against the competition that he was able to do it in the course of his career with Arkansas. Were there ups, were there downs? Yes. I mean, last year was an absolute mess. We get that. But, I mean, those kind of numbers, even for a good SEC team, like in Alabama, running back behind that, those are still solid numbers. He's doing this with the supporting cast of Arkansas. Again, nothing against Arkansas, but it's not the cream of the crop, right? So I think he could turn into a very legitimate steal. It could be like a really nice UDFA signing for the Detroit Lions, like overlooked because of a really awful 2020. Now he's getting another chance. Could you say last chance number 2? No? All right. I'm gonna end it here. This video's been long enough. So let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching. And I'm out.